Hey, deserving listeners, a lot of you have been asking me to react to this interview with Darcey and Stacey on YouTube, so I'm going to react to it. Let's watch.
I just feel like, Darcey, we need to get you your own show for you to find love, because the fans, like, we want you to find authentic love, you know, someone who loves you for you. And it seems like, I don't know, why do you feel like you keep running into these men that either don't love you for you or you feel like they're using you? Why do you feel like that?
It's a great question by the interviewer, and I'm curious what Darcey will say. The interview is saying, we all want, as an audience, for you, Darcey, to have a healthy, satisfying relationship, a good relationship that makes you feel loved and understood and cared for. What is it about you or the world that prevents you from achieving that? And let's see what she says here, because I think this is critical.
I think that's just a pattern that's played out in my life for many years now. You know, the past two relationships and with Georgie, you know, in a sense, and it's hurtful, but I decided to take that accountability for myself and heal from the past.
Okay, so that's good. I decided I'm going to take the accountability myself and deal with my past. I wonder what that means. That sounds very encouraging, especially given that we haven't heard that kind of language from her in the past, because that we don't know, but that kind of approach will, at the very least, have some benefits to it. Self-awareness, healing, that sort of thing, maybe she'll say.
And forgive myself. Because if I can't do that for me, then you know, I need to love myself first.
Okay, so I need to forgive myself, certainly, but for what, really? I mean, that lends itself to the hypothesis that I've had that underneath it all, she has a lot of shame that she doesn't deserve, but she feels like there's something wrong with her. We saw it much more pronounced with Jesse and with Tom after the breakups or during the difficult times. She would enter this mode that I think was a foundational mode for her, which is, I'll never find love. No one's ever going to love me. Everyone treats me terribly because that's what I deserve in life, that kind of thing. But then she very quickly would react to that and say, no, I'm strong and I don't deserve it, and those men are toxic, you know. And she's frequently in that mode of, I'm a terrible person, I don't deserve love, but no, I'm strong, I'm a strong woman, and I'm going to strike back. And she's vacillating between these black and white places instead of, well, you know, part of their relationship problems are my fault, but I shouldn't fall into a deep pit of shame. I should just be like, yeah, I mean, I have my faults and maybe I'm distorted, but I'm generally a good person, but who knows? And that's generally the approach that we all should take in relationships, that you should always assume that the conflicts that you're in with your partner are at least 50% your fault. And that's what you really need to be focusing on. And when I work with couples, I spend a lot of time trying to transition them from blaming or thinking about the other to thinking about themselves. If both people concentrate on their part, then one, you have a lot more control over your part than the other person's part. Plus, when you demonstrate to your partner that you're taking responsibility, you're apologizing, it creates a lot of trust and a lot of goodwill and a lot of motivation for the other person to take responsibility for their part. So if you're in this constant battle between I'm all bad and I'm all good, then you never get to that nuanced gray area, that relaxed, differentiated, mature, stable area. Now, that's not Darcey's fault. From my experience, it's because of relational traumas in one's past. I don't know what those are for Darcey. They've never really got into it. I suspect that goes way back, but I don't know. But anyway, so she just said, I've taken some time to focus on myself, to take responsibility, and forgive myself. So again, that lends itself to this idea of I'm battling this part of me that is wanting to tell me that I deserve to be rejected. That's what it sounds like to me, but I don't know.
And you'll see a stronger version of me, a better version of me, especially in Turkey, a freer, version where I think a lot of women will be able to relate to it.
Right. So this is a mode that, and by all means, there is a lot of wonderful power in having solidarity with women who are being oppressed and are being mistreated, and to celebrate that. As an Asian American, when Asian Americans are oppressed and I get together with my Asian American siblings, if you will, my comrades in arms, and we celebrate our Asian American heritage, because the thing about a lot of Asian Americans like myself who have been in the States for 4 or 5 generations, we're not Asian. We're not from Asia. My grandparents were born here in Washington State, and so we're not Asian. We're American, but we're Asian American, which is different. And so how do we celebrate that? And sometimes when you have this onslaught from the outside, it feels very good and liberating to celebrate, say, yeah, Asian American brothers and sisters, rise up. And, it feels good to have that kind of pride. And I think that Darcey resorts to that, which is fine. There's a lot of wonderfulness in that. I feel like I need to realize that I'm a powerful woman, and women matter, and dudes beware, or whatever that attitude is. Great. However, if it just ends there, which it seems like it does, and doesn't extend into what is my part, let me look at my relationships from a vantage point where I can figure out why are things always going so wrong, instead of this us versus them mentality, right? Of it's women against men, and I am going to persevere. And that denies her need, because there's no nuance there. It denies her need, clearly, that she has for attachment and loyalty and passion and romance that most people have. And how does that fit into that, right? And so it's the frequent mode that she goes into that I applaud her for, but if it just ends there, which it seems like it does, then she denies herself the ability to reflect and figure out how to actually achieve what she needs overall.
To face, a relationship and ask for the things that I want and put up my boundaries. I was always a very yes person, and I've changed in a lot of manners and ways. And
all right. So according to her, which I could see, she's saying, I'm usually a yes person. And now I'm putting up boundaries and saying no to some things. That might actually be a good thing. It doesn't work out for her, I think, with Georgie, but it could be a necessary step to health. When I work with people with assertiveness, my model is I have found there are 3 steps to assertiveness. The first and most unhealthy place is saying yes to everything. It's always just letting people walk all over you while resenting it and hurting on the inside. The third step that we're trying to get to is where you can be assertive, you know your feelings, you assert them in a mature, non-accusatory, non-aggressive way, while also considering the other person's feelings and accounting for that. So assertiveness isn't just putting up boundaries, it's considering how putting up boundaries will affect the other person and what the bigger picture is, right? So that's what we're trying to get to. The middle step often involves people saying no's. Think about the terrible 2s or the terrible 4s in a child developmental span, is this phase of life that we go through where we learn, hey, I can say no to things. This is fun. That's powerful. And when you're a terrible 2 or a terrible 4 or a terrible 7, people always say terrible 2s, but it really can occur throughout childhood, where the child will just say no to anything, even though the child wants something. Pizza is their favorite food, and you're like, would you like some pizza? And they're like, no, because to them, it's much more important to feel powerful than to get what they want. And so that's that middle step. And when I work with people who are working on assertiveness, because in the beginning of my practice, I would see this saying no to things as like, this isn't assertiveness, you understand? Like, you're just saying no. You're just putting up boundaries. You're not considering what other people need, and you're not considering all of your needs. It's good to put up boundaries, but what if putting up so many boundaries leads to none of your attachment needs being met? We've seen this with people like Mike and Natalie on the show, where it's all walls and no well, I don't want to be vulnerable right now. It doesn't feel comfortable, but I kind of need to if I'm going to have my overall holistic goal of attachment to being met. I don't know if that's true for Mike, but it looks like that. And in the beginning of my career, I thought, no, this is not assertiveness. But as time went on, I learned we have to go through those stages, that in order to come from a place of being a doormat and get to a healthy, assertive place, you have to go through a phase of, is it okay for me to say no, and to feel that power and to live in that power, and to learn, I can say no. That's something that I'm allowed to do, and really live in that space for a while before you can go on to the next phase, which is, okay, I could say no, totally, but should I say no given what their needs are, given what my needs are, given the bigger picture here? So I wonder if Darcey is going into that second phase, and that's a step to phase 3. Let's hope.
Not giving up on love, regardless.
You shouldn't. It's a process for sure. And I'm glad you made that point. It's so good, because I've learned in my own personal life, you have to heal yourself, right, to attract a partner that will love you in the right way. So the fact that you're even thinking on that path, it will come.
Totally. I just wonder if Darcey is doing anything to quote unquote heal herself. She seems that she's in the same mode. So I've been saying, maybe she's in step 2 of assertiveness, but there's also an argument that she's been in that phase periodically throughout the years that we've been watching her with Jesse and with Tom. So this healing of the self, I would imagine, would be therapy. And did she reference that she might have been to more than one session? Anyway, the one session that we did see with her was a good first session for sure, but if I remember right, at least the clips that they showed us, it was mainly her talking about how men have wronged her, which is fine. That's a wonderful use of therapy, and there's a lot of richness to that healing, maybe self-discovery, just getting things off your chest. But if that's all that the therapy was, which is, I'm going to talk about how other people are bad to me and toxic, instead of what am I doing to contribute to that? I'm not going to blame myself for the way Jesse would yell at me, but I am going to wonder, what is it about me that chooses these kinds of partners? Or what is it about me that makes it so that when these conflicts happen, that I don't manage in a more healthy way, particularly with Tom and particularly with Georgie?
I don't know when, but it's gonna come.
I just felt like going to Turkey was the start of all that. And as soon as I went to Connecticut on that journey with Stacey, we not only bonded stronger as twins.
A lot of people have hypothesized that the two of them will go into this mode of, we are together and it's us against the world. And it seems quite possible that for the two of them growing up with all the traumas that they went through of being bullied and ostracized, that they have a neurological habit of, when in doubt, let's go into the mode of, it's us against men. It's us against others. And that's safer to us. And also potentially having medical procedures is a safe zone for the two of them. You have more control over that, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but if you fall into that mode when it doesn't really apply, because that's with Jesse, it would make sense. The two of them would bond and say, let's stick together. At least we have each other. In that situation, at least from my vantage point, I would say, yeah, good. But with Georgie, it seems like it's forced on a situation that it doesn't apply because of their habit. I don't know.
But, that transformation was so inwardly that, I feel like it shows on the outside now. And that's not like a superficial thing. I feel like I feel like a glow, like a strength, and.
All right. So she's talking about, look, I've had these procedures and it's not a superficial thing. I feel a glow. I feel a strength. There's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. If you had a good outfit that you just are totally rocking and you're walking around and you're feeling, I feel strong, I feel good, I got this new jacket or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all that you rely upon, and if that's your only way of having strength or self-esteem, then that's a thin foundation to stand on.
Um, I'm not gonna, hide behind the past. That's gone. That doesn't serve me. I said goodbye to it. I cut the cord.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we're hearing this. It's eerie to watch the similarities between the things she says after Jesse, the things she says after Tom, and the things she's saying after Georgie. They're so identical, right? I'm not going to let the past bother you. I'm moving on. I'm moving forward. I'm just going to forget about it. Has that worked for you? Now, I get it. But what that tells me, I think a lot of the things she says is actually in reaction to a conflict that's happening inside of her. She will talk about the side of her that she's trying to bolster. And this is a useful thing to think about when you hear people talking and you're confused in situations like this. One thing to think about is, what are they arguing against inside of themselves? Like if someone says, look, I don't care what people say. I'm a goddess. I am awesome. I'm beautiful. I'm amazing. Okay. And it seems like it doesn't really fit the situation, or it seems defensive. Possibly it's a reaction to a very strong voice inside of themselves that's saying that they're ugly and worthless. So if she's saying, I'm going to move on from the past, I don't need the past anymore, there's a possibility that there's a strong voice in her that is dragging her back and saying, look at what you've done. Look at all the things you're ashamed of, which would be normal, right? And that's a wonderful opportunity to explore and unpack and get support and maybe challenge some of our narratives in therapy. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.